everyone, welcome to the Dorky Reader. I'm a little behind on my schedule because I had been sick. I was in the hospital with pneumonia, pretty severe pneumonia, which kind of freaked me out, but I did make it out and I'm mostly better. It's taking a while for my lungs to still heal, so if I cough, which I feel the need to right now, that is why. But overall, I have improved, and that's great. I wanted to use this first video back to go over all the books I did end up reading in January, kind of give my opinions on those books. And then maybe afterwards I can do a couple TBR prompts for the end of February. Though I have been reading some just on my own, on a whim books. And I didn't film because, you know, I was just feeling crappy. But anyway, I did switch formats. Instead of looking through my messy notebook and picking random numbers, I've decided to do what most YouTubers do and make a TBR jar, which will be fun, I think. It took me a while to make because I had like 114, 115 prompts in my notebook, but I cut them all out. I put them in a jar, or what used to be a vase, and now I'll be able to do what so many other YouTubers do. I think it is more aesthetically pleasing, don't you think? Like just a pretty little colorful jar. I think so. So I think that'll work out just great. Okay, to go over all the books that I read in January, we'll start with a book that wasn't part of the prompts or the selection last time. It was right at the turn of the new year, and I had been reading book 2 in the Ember of the Ashes trilogy, Torch Against the Night. And it hasn't changed my opinion of the series. I still really like it. I'm looking forward to book 3 and 4. Book 2 was like this wonderful, very exciting, thrilling chase or escape from the enemy. I don't want to give too much away. There was also a prison break at the very end and all sorts of gruesome details. The villains in this book are truly evil. She does a fantastic job making you hate the enemy. That's something I will say for her. The romance in this book is nice. It's not overstated. So that's one thing I really like about it. I love romance in books. It has to have a little bit. But when it's too much romance and the plot is shriveled away, I hate it. But I love this book's balance. Does that make sense? Has the perfect balance of romance mixed with a fantastic plot and a fantastic story. So brava to Torch Against the Night. I'm looking forward to books 3 and 4. That was the very first book I read this year. But now on to the books that we chose, I guess, in my last videos. Okay. The next book I ended up reading, or the book I ended up finishing first, was called Daughter of the Forest by Juliette Marillier. I hope I pronounced that right. This book was fantastically written. Like, it feels like an old world fairy tale. It is. There are some very disturbing elements to it. And there's something about the book that I will mention that can make or break it for some people, some readers. For me, it did make me uncomfortable, and it would have been a 5-star book, but I hate age gaps. I really do. They make me feel very uncomfortable. And the reason I still love the book and still think it's fantastic is this is a medieval setting, and in the medieval times, her age range for marriage, for whatever, is very common. That is the age girls were wed off, if that makes any sense to you. So the fact that things happen to her that are very disturbing can be upsetting. There is an essay scene in this book that is pretty graphic, and knowing that it happens to her when she's quite young, oof, it's hard to take. The book itself, though, the fairy tale aspect of it is a retelling of, is it the 7 Swans, 6 Swans? What is that story? I'm really bad with old fairy tale names. But you know the story about the brothers who turned into swans, and she has to do some kind of thing where she makes a cloak or a fabric or whatever. This is very similar to that, and it takes place in medieval Ireland. It has just the prose, the writing prose in this book are phenomenal. She is a very talented author. The hardships this young girl goes through without being able to talk, because that's part of the curse that she ends up undergoing, that she has to endure all these things without being able to utter a single word. It's heartbreaking, it's devastating, but you really, really cheer for her. Your heart breaks for her because she has to go through so much. And by the end of the story, you're just so relieved, when the fairy tale reaches its conclusion. But it is a beautiful, devastating, hard to swallow book. But overall, I gave it like a 4 out of 5 stars. If you're not into age gaps, which I'm not, but I can tolerate sometimes historically somewhat accurate things, but it is upsetting, then I would avoid it. If you can handle that and you're okay with it, you also feel like, okay, well, it is medieval, whatever, then go ahead and read this book. It won't disappoint you. It is beautiful. It is really chunky and dense. It took me a while, I remember, to finish this, but it was worth it. Okay, the next book on my list here. I'm gonna do that. Ooh, that might make it better. Okay, we'll try that, see if that works. The next book that I ended up reading was Snow Globe by So-Young Park. And this book was, I would say, maybe a 3-star for me. The plot, the world, the story arc was fantastic. It was super exciting and fun to read, and I liked visualizing this world a lot. And I think if this were a movie or a show, I would be 100% invested in it. The part that bothered me in this story was that I could not connect very well with the main character. She let some things slide morally that I could not fathom ever letting go, and she just kind of was like, okay, well, I'll do this anyway, or she just batted her eyelashes and whatever, but I could never. So that disconnect for me made it harder to really connect to the story, and it kind of, in a way, it didn't ruin it, but it did kind of ruin it. Does that make sense? So basically, you have this frozen world where the landscape of Earth is just like 40 degrees below zero everywhere, like just a frozen wasteland. Everyone's job almost is to basically go into a power plant and manually create power so that they have electricity to heat their homes, to provide for themselves, and to provide the snow globe, which is like this giant domed area of warmth and like normal city living with their power as well. Basically, all the people, their main form of entertainment is watching these reality shows that are documented by directors and actors in Snow Globe. So some people are more popular than others. This one girl finds that she looks a whole lot like this main superstar in her favorite show, and she just loves watching her show. And she gets approached by a director one day at work, asking her to help her by replacing her, because the main actress, commits suicide. And so she needs to be the new star of the show, or else it would just be devastating to all the people watching. So she goes into Snow Globe. There's all these things that happen. Things are revealed about what it's really like in there, and there's mysteries to unravel, and it is all very exciting. And like I said, the plot it's a thumbs up from me. I really, really liked it. I liked the overall story. it's just that main character, really, that wasn't it for me. So if that sounds interesting to you, I recommend it. If you can kind of let go some weird moral things and just go with the flow, great book. But for me personally, I'll probably be donating this either to my daughter's school library, or I might put it in a little library on the street nearby. All right, thank you. After that, I may or may not have read Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman. This book did not disappoint. It was hilarious. I'm a gamer. My husband's a gamer. All my friends are nerds. And this 100% felt like home to me. It was just a riot. Basically, Carl, he's basically stuck at home with his ex-girlfriend's cat. One night, the cat escapes. He goes outside to catch her, and boom, just like that, everything is smashed and crushed by some crazy alien whatever. Everyone dies on the planet except people who were outside at the time. And these dungeon portals or doors open up, and there's a message: go into the dungeon if you want to participate in. If not, then you can fend for yourself on the planet's surface. Dungeon Carl is stuck in his underwear in below freezing temperatures. He's like, well, crap, I need to get warm. So he goes inside, and he is now stuck in this giant, massive televised the galaxy dungeon crawl. And it's just so funny. The cat character, oh God, what was her name? Donut, Princess Donut, something, I don't even know. She is so great. The mobs are hilarious. There was a bad llama, which had like methamphetamines on it. There were like weird goblins that were doing some crazy stuff. It's definitely an adult book. It's not for children. It's a riot. It's very brutal, very violent. So if you're not into that, don't read it. I am really looking forward to book 2, because basically I have a feeling these books are going to be going by level. Like they'll get through level 1, 2, and then maybe 3, 4. I don't even know. So I'm looking forward to seeing what happens on the next levels of his dungeon crawl. So definitely a new favorite. So great. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars just because I didn't know, like, if I were really being honest, like, is it the world's greatest book of all time? No, but it was so fun. I might switch it to 5 just because I had such a good time with it. All right, after that I read Susanna Clarke's Piranesi, which wasn't a fantasy. Not really, well, maybe a little bit. I don't know, it was kind of strange. It was more like a psychological thriller, but mixed with a little bit of fantasy. It was very strange, and I don't want to spoil the whole story for you because that would make it not fun to read. But the character of Piranesi is a very sweet, pure, innocent soul to me. Like, he's somehow kind of been... I don't want to spoil that either. How do I say this without ruining it? He's in a house filled with water and weird things, and he just goes from room to room, and he has a very beautiful way of looking at things. There are a couple other characters in this world that pop up, and there's a sense of ominousness and deceit. And as you read, you learn more. But it is a beautiful story. A lot of people put this as like, oh, this is incredible. It's like the most fantastic book ever. I wouldn't say that. But would I say it's a good book? Yes, absolutely. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I think it's written very well. I liked the story. But was it mind-blowing to me? Not to me. But I do recommend it. I think a lot of non-fantasy readers could break into fantasy with a book like this. Does that make sense? It kind of has that vibe going for it. And the last book I read in January, I read as I was getting sick and going to the hospital. And so it took me forever to finish this book, and that is Five Broken Blades. Part of why that was hard for me was I didn't really love this book. I know others that I've watched on YouTube have really liked it, and some have not. And I think I'm more in the have not. And part of that is, for me, I don't like insta-lust kind of, like, really kind of, what's the word? It's cringy to me when people are like, oh, I kept looking at her thighs and like, I don't know, to me, just cringe. That's the vibe I got from this book. The story itself, if it had been edited, if you could edit some of that down, cut out a big chunk of that and just focused on the plot and the other parts of the story, I think I would have had a lot more fun with this. But it still, to me, wasn't great. There were some writing issues with me that I wasn't like super into. Like, there's one character, his point of view, his perspective, he spoke a lot with double negatives, and I hate that. Oh, so like, having to read his part made me like, I didn't really like that. I also, it's in first person perspective for each character. Like, I did this, and again, that's not my favorite type of writing. It has been done on occasion well enough for me to enjoy it. I'm not going to say that I've never read a book like that or liked it. I have. However, most of the time, kind of like in this one, that perspective for me just feels a little bit juvenile. Does that make sense? So I'm not sure if I'll continue this. I do love the cover, but I think I'm going to end up donating this one as well. Sorry, guys. Don't hate me for my opinions. I did give it a 3 out of 5 because it was an exciting tale. I don't like giving bad book reviews unless a book really deserves it. And this one didn't. It was just a 3-star for me. But, yeah, so sorry I didn't agree with some of you. Okay, and then there was one other book, and it was actually before Five Broken Blades that I read part of. I actually DNF'd this book. It wasn't terribly written, nothing like that. It was just so brutally slow and boring that I couldn't. I gave it a really good try. I made it, 150 pages in. A Discovery of Witches. And I'm sorry, I know a lot of you there are people who love this book and love this world. For me, 150 pages of absolutely nothing changing in the plot was just too much for me. I couldn't. They were still just having dinner and talking, and nothing transpired. She went to yoga. She took a yoga class. What else happened? More sitting at the library. Yep. Nothing. No change of anything. That was it. Just sitting at the library, eating, and yoga. I couldn't continue. It was sucking my life away. I'm so sorry to the people who love this book. I couldn't. My daughter is interested in it. She says that sounds great. So I will keep it on my shelf for when she's old enough to read it. But after that, it's out of here for me. It's not my cup of tea. So that was kind of interesting. I had a couple books that I loved. I really loved the Ember and the Ashes sequel. I love Dungeon Crawler Carl. I thought Piranesi was good. I thought Daughter of the Forest was fantastic. The Five Broken Blades, Snow Globe, and this was not it for me. So that is my summary of what I read in January, and I will continue forward with 2 more books that I read in February. After I was done with all that, I looked at my Goodreads thing and I said, oh no, I'm behind, because the hospital, I was too sick to read. had like a week and a half of almost no reading. So I picked up 2 middle grades and I read them, and I will go over what I read. I read Keepers of the Lost Cities Unraveled, which is basically about the time that Keith spent in the human lands, and it kind of explains what he went through, kind of shows some secrets he may have. It's just a little tiny filler book between this and the next part of the series. For those who don't read Keepers of the Lost Cities, it's a middle grade, and it's about Sophie Foster, this girl who one day finds out that she is actually an elf. And her whole life has kind of been a lie, and her parents aren't her parents, and all sorts of things. She's taken to this world of the elves, and she has to live or figure out a whole new way of living life because they live a completely different lifestyle. There's lots of mysteries that progress as the series progresses, and so it becomes, each book gets more, like, slightly more mature. The first one being kind of for the youngest audience, and as it goes, it gets a little more exciting and a little more daring and a little more adventurous. But this is just a filler book in that, and so I finished this off because I'm a big fan of this fun little series. The other middle grade I read was Impossible Creatures, which gave me a lot of like his Dark Materials vibes. However, I don't believe it's written as masterfully as that, as Mr. Pullman's work. I do think this is fun. It was a fun book. It didn't shy away from character death and embrace that kind of darkness that sometimes kids' books skim over. So I did appreciate that. However, I think the part that I didn't like in this book was the writing had gaps in it. Like, without giving like a chapter end or a little nudge from one paragraph to the next, there could be a huge time skip. And it felt a little weird when that happened to me personally, and I couldn't quite get over that. But I did enjoy it. It was a little strange, but there were some very big similarities to his Dark Materials. There was a knife that could cut through anything. There were like little animal-like creatures that were part of the story, and there was a strange girl who was a little bit wild, and she was friends with, in this case, I think there was a baby griffin. So there's all sorts of parallels there that go back and forth, but I will say that the overall message and depth and the writing prose in Mr. Pullman's His Dark Materials is like, a million times better. So when I was reading it and I was comparing the two in my mind, it did take away from this. But I think children would love this book. I think they could have a lot of fun with it. I'm not sure actually if my daughter would love it as much as I originally thought, because it says impossible creatures, and there are fantastical creatures in this world. However, it is more people-focused than animal-focused or creature-focused, which I think I was expecting more of the latter. And I think my daughter would have appreciated that more. She is really into like animal perspectives or dragon perspectives or whatever, like that kind of thing drives her. But this is definitely more people focused. Anyway, it is still a good book, and I do recommend it to others. But if you're gonna read it like I did and compare back and forth between one great book and this, you're gonna feel a little like, and I think that's where I was. But anyway, that is what I've been reading while I was sick and while I was gone. And hopefully in the future, we won't have to get pneumonia again and I can be right on track. So I'll see you in the next video, which will be me doing my TBR prompts for March and maybe a TBR prompt or two for the end of this month. Okay, bye.